Welcome, my friends. It's been a while. How the hell are you? Now, we have a hot little lady next to me. Eh, I take that back. She's beautiful in her own way, I'm sure. Okay, and so the topic is end time prophecies 6, 7, and the U.S. relationship with Israel. I'm currently drafting a research paper on this very topic. So this will be a practice of me getting this out so that I can put this paper together. Now, Abrahamic end time prophecies are specifically what we are addressing because it relates to this Jewish state of Israel and the Judeo Christian country of America. And I put that in air quotations because there's a lot to unpack there. But as of lately, in an attack on anti Semitism, which has really grown since and I put that in quotations, has really grown since the October 7th escalation of the Palestinian Israel conflict. So, what we have is a need to go through specifically Jewish eschatological beliefs and teachings. Eschatology, the study of those relating to the eschaton, which in Greek is more of end of time. In Judaism, they actually use a term end of days, specific, specifically in Daniel, where he says, "You will rise up to the end of days. You'll be kept, and then you'll be brought in. You'll be made low, and then you'll be made high." They relate that to the creation of Israel originally, of a people, the covenant made to Abraham, Moses, and King Solomon's temple, the second temple, and then the expulsion, the diaspora, which namely happens under the Roman conquest of Judea and Jerusalem. It's important to remember that the story of Abraham, Isaac, Yitzhak, and Jacob, Yaakov, Jacob, who would later become Israel. The story goes, and it's totally fictional, mythological. It can be taken, and there are different layers to it, the more mystical, spiritual, and then the more literal. When you ask, I don't want to say the normal Jew because lots of these beliefs are normative, but you will hear an explanation from a Jewish person about the ideas of Edom, who is Esau. It's like Esau's people and land. So Edom is that which relates to Esau, or Esav, and Esau from Edom comes Amalek, who's further down in the descendants, and which is the eternal enemy of Jacob, Israel. So all that's not Israel, and especially that which is in conflict more directly with Israel, Jacob, is Esau, is Edom, is Amalek. And you'll hear it spiritualized, which I push for the rabbis to adopt and for believers to adopt a more spiritualized version of the story where they say that Edom is doubt, doubt in the promise of God, mostly doubt in, as opposed to faith in the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. So now we have those relationships set up, a dichotomy, a good versus evil, somewhat, or the protagonist versus the antagonist or the adversary. The adversary is a term for Shaitan, Satan, who is really the planet Saturn, a personification, or that they relate Saturn's like the symbol, the planet of the Satan, who works together with his guardian angel, Samael, which I believe is Mars, which is related to Edom. It's the red planet, and Esau means the red one. And the story goes that he was deceived, tricked by the second born into stealing the birthright from the firstborn. Now we have different peoples playing the adversarial role in the foundational story of the Jews. Mind you, ahistorical. There's absolutely no evidence of an exodus out of Egypt. Egypt being one of the original adversaries of the Jews. The Babylonians, who had them in captivity, they also liken Edom to Haman and the story of Purim, which is totally a fictional character. There is no Haman. There was no, that story is totally fictional, which would be the oppression by the Greeks, who would later become the Greeks. And then after that, we have the persecution of the Romans with the destruction of the second temple. Now, that sent them out into their last diaspora. And that is the house of Israel getting broken, usually for their infidelity to Yahweh, which is usually because of interbreeding with an outside tribe people. Although oftentimes they do it for strategic purposes. In the Bible, we have um, selling off of prostituting sisters and wives for their certain situations to get out of. Now, it says that Edom and Israel cannot both be at the top at the same time. When one rises, another one falls. When one falls, another one rises. And that part of the end time prophecy is relating to the ingathering of those scattered is the destruction of Edom, who's related to Rome, and Rome is related to the West, the Europeans, and then with the founding of America, which was mostly by Europeans, the Americas. So when the rabbis speak of Edom, Esau, Amalek, they're most often talking about, in a literal sense, the West, the decadent West, which is materialistic, which is pagan, heathen, which is fallen for a false Messiah, Jesus. Those nations, the Hebrew word for the nations is the goyim, which is also translated into cattle. And they're ruled by Samael. And this is how the Masons, Solomon had his temple built. According to tradition, there's no history of a Solomon's temple. Or if there was, it was a no, it wasn't the richest in the world, not even in its neighborhood. And so Solomon, through his magic, dark sorcery, with his seal, his ring, the Star of David, the Shield of David of Renfram, through that and the Hebrew like language, the letters, which goes to Aramaic. Hebrew is a fairly newer construction. It He built a temple without any of the Jews lifting a finger. So that talks about how the non-Jews, the Gentiles, the Goyim are the cattle who do the work to ultimately build the third temple. They'll probably have it done by Masons, by Freemasons, who think that they're the Masons that build the temple. Now they'll spiritualize it and they'll say that that means our body, our mind, our spirit, our soul. But that is the below, and then the above is the greater Israel, the spiritual. But they also believe that it needs to happen in the physical realm because that's above, so below. Therefore, working with the Temple Institute, who's striking coins of the third temple with Donald Trump on it, who they see as King Cyrus, who is one of the few examples where we have a non Jew playing the role of the Moshiach, the anointed one, to help lead the Jewish people, Israel, out of captivity into freedom. And King Cyrus did that as the king of Persia. And they see Donald Trump playing that role. But then what we get from the Dead Sea Scrolls is they even had ideas not just of two, one a suffering servant, one a king, one a warrior, but three different ones. And sometimes one playing both of them. And sometimes they say this whole idea of the Moshiach, of the anointed one, isn't a specific person. It could be just kind of the overall energy at play within the cycles. Which brings me to another point is that most will say that there's a difference between the eschatological end time views of the West and the East, or the Middle East and the Far East, and that the Abrahamic one is linear, and that the further Eastern ones, Indian, Central Asian, Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Jainism, and then In the middle, we have Zoroastrianism, the Persian religion of the Babylonians. So the Abrahamic version they say is more linear, where there's an end of days as opposed to, or an end of time. See, but these scholars try to make that dichotomy, and I argue that it is a false one, and they do it more so to try to separate the Abrahamic thing as being more monotheistic and totally different from the pagan Indian traditions. But guess what? They're both built on the zodiac. Just as we have the zodiac that we go through in the year, there's a greater cosmic one. In the East, they measure it by the Kali Yuga. And then out of the Kali Yuga is the next age, which is like the golden age. In the Greeks, they have this idea of the suffering, the judgment before the golden age of Saturn, because Saturn is a ruler of Aquarius. And Aquarius is the age of the Moshiach in Judaism, in Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah, which is the heart, the kernel of Judaism. Lots of Jewish people will say, oh, well, that's for some fringe rabbis that we really don't pay attention to. That's them just living on the esoteric outer wheel of it and not being hip to the inner, deeper teachings. Or and they'll throw you for it because they're not going to tell you that, oh yeah, we believe that the West, Europe has to fall for Israel to reign supreme. And out of the sixth age into the seventh age, out of the sixth days of creation to the seventh day, where they rest with God on the Sabbath, ruled by Saturn. That's how we're coming out of the six into the seven, which the whole 6-7 phenomena is a thing right now, which is interesting. So, in a nutshell, that's take that, and now we could go look into the relationship with Israel and America, and know that that's the theology behind the scene. I hope y'all appreciate that.